So in this tutorial we're gonna learn how to drop guns. So in the last tutorial we made a script so we can actually pick up all the weapons now. Now we're gonna create a script that allows you to drop the weapons. So we're gonna stop the game and we're gonna select our pickups and we're gonna duplicate them. So we're gonna duplicate all the pickups like this, and over here in the project folder we're gonna right click it and create a new folder. So create and select the folder. So here we're gonna name the folder dropped weapons. So when the player drops a weapon, it's gonna be a separate pickup. So we're gonna separate them like this, just drag and drop it over here. Now we have all of them right here, and we can rename it so we actually know which one is which. So we're gonna go over here and we're gonna name it dropped pistol pickup, and also dropped shotgun, and also dropped cannon. Now we can select all the normal pickups and hide them like this, so there's no confusion. So basically when we're gonna drop the weapon, we're actually gonna use some gravity, so the player is actually gonna throw the weapon. So now we're gonna select all the dropped objects and go over here, and we're gonna deselect the is triggered. So on these objects, is triggered is turned on, but on this object is not gonna be turned on. Now what we're gonna do is add a new component. So we're gonna add a rigid body. So just add a component and type rigid and select the normal rigid body. So as you already know, the rigid body 2D is used for 2D games, but this is a 3D game, so we're using rigid body. Now we have to freeze the rotation on the x-axis and on the z-axis, but we're gonna leave the y-axis like this. And now we're gonna go and select our first object, so the pistol pickup, and we're gonna resize the box collider so it actually touches the ground. Because now that the gravity is working, it's actually gonna fall down, and we can extend this so it's actually gonna be a little bit above the ground. Like this. We're gonna go to the cannon and also select this to edit the collider, and as you can see you have dots over here, and just extend it down to the ground. And now let's go to the shotgun and basically do the same. As you can see, this is already selected, and just drag and drop it down like this. Alright, so this is gonna be fine. Now we're gonna start the game and actually check out, maybe we messed up something. It could happen that the objects fall through the ground, and as you can see everything is fine. But now if you go over here and try to pick up a weapon, it's not gonna work. That's because we're using now on collider enter. So if you go back to the player, and if you open the player control script that we made in previous tutorials, and if you check out the script that we actually use to pick up the weapons, it's on trigger enter, and on collision enter it's not over here. So we have to select everything over here and also paste it inside of the collision enter like this. And now as you can see over here we have with red we have the errors. That's because over here the collider has been named other, but over here we named the collision. So we're gonna select this and we're gonna replace the other with the collision. So just copy this and paste it to other. Like this. Now let's save it. Let's go back to the Unity, press play. Now if we try to pick up the weapons, it's actually gonna work again. So here we go, we picked up the weapon, and as you know in the previous video we talked about arrays, and over here equip weapons array. Let me show you again. So just press play and we're gonna scroll down, and as you can see equip weapons array is empty right now. It's 0 right here and the list is empty, but once you start picking up, element 0 is cannon, element 1 is pistol, and element 3 is shotgun. Like this. And now you can actually switch between them. Alright, so this is it. Now stop the game. Now let's go back to the code, and we're gonna create a script so we can actually drop the weapons. So first of all, what we're gonna do is save this into the dropped weapons folder. So we're gonna create a prefab. So we're just drag and drop it over here and select original prefab. Now also drag and drop the rest of the weapons like this, and now we're gonna select all of them and just delete them from the game. And now we can select all of the previous pickups and show them in the game again. And now over here, as you can see, we have prefabs. So we're gonna use the prefabs to actually copy an item into the game. So we're copying a prefab from our project folder and making a clone of it inside of the scene. So basically it's gonna be added over here and also inside of the game. So first of all, we have to link our prefabs to the script. So we're gonna scroll up and we're gonna go over here and we're gonna type public game object and make it an array. So to make it an array, just add these brackets over here and name it drop weapons like this. Save it, go back to Unity. Now if you scroll down, select the player first, scroll down. As you can see, we have drop weapons over here, and over here we're gonna resize it to 3, and we're gonna add these objects to over here. So we're just gonna drag and drop it in the same order as over here. So first of all we're gonna add a cannon, then we're gonna add a pistol to number 2 element, and also to number 1 element we're gonna add the shotgun like this. Alright, this can be fine. Now let's go back to the code. First of all, we're gonna create a script that's gonna copy the object that you're currently holding inside of the game. So let's highlight this bracket by clicking over here, and if you scroll up, as you can see, this is the start of the update function and this is the end of the update function. So we're gonna go one bracket above over here and we're gonna press enter. So we're in the update function right now. And over here we're gonna create a script. If you press the key Q, you're gonna drop the weapon. So we're gonna type a conditional if statement. So if input.getKey down, and we have to tell it which key we're using. So we're gonna type key code and Q. So if a key is pressed down, and we have to tell it which key, so we selected the key Q. So when the Q is pressed down, it's gonna run the code inside of here. So because we used get key down over here, that means if you want to drop 2 weapons, you're gonna have to press the button, release it, and press it again to drop 2 weapons. But if you use only get key, as we used over here, this will loop all the time when the key is pressed down. This will run it only once if you hold the key down. Alright, so now we have to actually select a position where we want the weapon to drop. So first of all, we're gonna go back to Unity, select our player, and go over here. We're gonna right click over here, select create empty game object, and over here we're gonna name it dropped weapon spawn point like this. And now we actually have to select where we want the weapon to spawn. As you can see, this is an empty game object and we're gonna move it to a position where we want to spawn it. So we have to move it a little bit away from the player. That's because if it's too close, it's actually gonna automatically pick up the weapon when you throw it. So make sure that you move it a little bit further away from the player. I'm gonna try this. As you can see, this is the position of the dropped weapon spawn point, and now we have to actually link it to the script. So we're gonna go back to Unity and we're gonna type public game object, and we're gonna name it dropped weapon spawn point like this, and we have to link it to the script now. So we're gonna go back to the Unity, select your player, and as you can see, we have an empty game object over here, and we have to drag and drop it over here to the script. Alright, so now the game object is linked to the script, and we're gonna use the position of the game object to tell the script where we want the weapon to spawn when you drop it. So now we're gonna scroll back down, and over here we have the input get key down key code Q. So we're gonna go inside of the if statement. So if this is true, it's gonna run this code. So first of all, we're gonna create the code to actually drop a weapon. So we're gonna type instantiate and add these brackets, and now we have to tell it, if you hover over the instantiate, we have to tell it which object. So we're gonna type drop weapons, this is the array, and we're gonna select 0 right now because we're just trying it out. Now we have to tell it the position, so we're using the one that we just created, the dropped weapon spawn point. So we have to tell it the position where we want to clone the game object, so where it's gonna spawn in the game. So we're gonna type dropped weapon spawn point and transform at position. And now we have to tell it the rotation, so we're gonna use the same rotation as this object. So we're gonna type dropped weapon spawn point dot transform dot rotation. Alright, so now if you save this and go back to Unity, now if we go back to the game and press play, and now if you press Q, as you can see, we can make unlimited amount of dropped cannon pickups. Alright, so now let's go back, let's stop the game. First of all, we're gonna check if dropped weapon spawn point is too close to the player. So first of all, we check the cannons, as you already saw, it's fine. So now we're gonna go under 1. So we're gonna type 1 over here. That means that we're gonna access the element 1 over here, so the shotgun. So let's try to spawn the shotgun now. So press play, press Q. As you can see, this is also working. And now let's try also for the gun. Press number 2 over here. That's because the gun is on the element 2. As you see over here. So now let's go play the game and try it out. Alright, so right now we're in the play mode, and as you already know, nothing will be saved once we stop the game. So I'm just gonna show you what happens if the dropped weapon spawn point is too close to the player. So just fix it by moving it further from the player if that's an issue that you have right now. So if we move it directly to the player, and if we press Q, it's gonna automatically pick up the weapon that we just dropped. So we want the object to move further away from the player. So now if we stop the game, as I already know, nothing was saved, so this was moved again back to the default position. So I just moved this to show you what happens if it's too close. And now what we're gonna do is we have to detect which weapon we currently have equipped. So to do this, we're actually gonna have to add some tags over here to the equipped weapons. So over here we have the cannon, we're gonna go over here and we're gonna add a tag. Add a tag, and we're gonna add a tag for each weapon. So over here we're gonna type cannon, now click plus, and add shotgun, and click another plus, and type pistol. Like this. Okay, now we added the tags, and now we're gonna go under the cannon, and we actually have to click on the untagged and add the cannon tag. Now we go to the shotgun and also do the same thing, add the shotgun tag, and now go to the pistol and add the pistol tag, like this. Alright, so now we're gonna go back and we're gonna check which weapon we have equipped right now. So to do this, we're gonna go over here and we're gonna type if equipped weapons. So this is the array equipped weapons, which gets filled when you pick up the weapons. So first of all, we want to check which weapon we have equipped right now. So we're gonna go inside of the equipped weapons array, and we used selected weapon to know which weapon in the array is currently used. So we're gonna type selected weapon -1, and we're gonna check the tag of it. So we're gonna type .tag and type over here cannon. So for each of the weapons, we're gonna check the tag of it. So if the tag of the object is cannon, else if. So if this is not true, so if the tag of the object is not cannon, then it's gonna check if the tag of the object is pistol. We're gonna copy this and we're gonna paste it over here, and we're gonna check if it's shotgun. Alright, so now we're gonna go over here, we're gonna copy instantiate like this and just paste it over here. So if the cannon is picked up, then we're gonna check out where we got the cannon. So we're gonna click on our player and scroll down, and as you can see, the cannon is on element 0. So over here we're gonna set the element to 0, and we're gonna paste it also over here. And for the pistol is on element 2, as you see. So we're gonna type 2 over here, so this is fine. And the shotgun is on the element 1, like this. Now let's save it, and let's go back to the Unity, and we're gonna check what happens right now. So if we press play, and as you can see, we got nothing picked up right now. So if we press Q, nothing happens. Okay, we actually get an error, so let's check out where's the error. Okay, so this is checking the equipped weapons array, even though it's empty, so this is not gonna find. Over here we're gonna check if the length of the equipped weapons array is actually bigger than 0. So if the length of it is bigger than 0, so if the element is bigger than 0, then it's gonna check the tag of the object that's equipped right now. So let's save it and let's go back to Unity, click play. And now if we press Q, nothing happens, we have no error. And let's pick up some weapons. So we're gonna pick up this one, and also this one, like this, and press Q. And also nothing happens for some reason. So if we go over here and we have cannon, well, let's go over here, and so currently it's not working. So we named it differently over here. So it's cannon over here, but we named it incorrectly over here, so we have to fix it. So add the A over here and save it and stop the game. Alright, so now we press Q, nothing happens. Pick up the cannon, press Q, as you can see we spawn another cannon. And if you select the gun, press Q, we spawn a gun. And also if we press Q over here, we spawn a shotgun. Alright, so this is working fine. Now we can spawn different weapons. What we're gonna do next is actually we're gonna remove the game object from the equipped weapons array. So now we're actually gonna create a script to actually drop the weapons and not just spawn more of the weapons. So we're gonna go over here and we're gonna type a new function. So we're gonna type private void drop weapon and add these brackets. So now when we call this, it's gonna call the code inside of here. So over here, first of all, we're gonna disable the weapon, so we're gonna hide it when you press Q. So we're gonna type equipped weapons and we're gonna call the selected weapons. So we're gonna use selected weapon -1 because we started the selected weapon with 1 and the array start with 0. So we used -1 over here, and we're gonna type set active false. So now it's gonna hide the game object. And also let's just copy paste this over here like this. And now if we go back to Unity, press play. Now if you pick up the cannon and press Q, it's actually gonna hide it, but this still doesn't work correctly. So we're gonna stop the game and go back to the code. So what we want to do is when you drop the weapon, we want to remove it from the equipped weapons array. Right now this is still not working correctly because if you press number 1, it actually activates it again. That's because in the player script we still have the cannon under equipped weapons, so we have to remove it over here. Now we're gonna go over here and we're gonna type the code to remove it. So to remove it, just type equipped weapons and we're gonna select the selected weapons. So selected weapons -1 and we're gonna remove it. So to do this, just type equals null like this. Now let's save the code and let's see what happens. So we're gonna go back to Unity, press play, scroll down, and let's look at our script. Let's look at the equipped weapons script. So we equip it, the equipped weapons array gets resized by 1, and under element 0 the cannon has been added. So now if we press Q, the element 0 is empty, so it says none over here. So the weapon has been deleted from the equipped weapons. Now if we press number 1, we get an error. That's because we have an empty element in the array. So to remove this error, we have to completely remove the element from the array. C# doesn't actually allow us to remove an array. If you want to actually fix this, we're gonna have to create a temporary array, because you can actually copy the whole contents of an array. So we're gonna create a temporary array. We're gonna copy the objects from the equipped weapons array into the new temporary array, and by filling the temporary array one by one, we're always gonna check if the element in the array is empty, and if it's empty, it's gonna ignore the object, so it's not gonna be added to the temporary array. Then once the array is filled up, we're gonna copy the contents of the temporary array inside of our actual equipped weapons array. So by doing this, we're creating a whole new array. We're removing all the empty elements, and we only have the elements in our array that have a weapon linked to it. And then we copy the whole content of the array to our equipped weapons array. Alright, so let's go back to the script. First of all, we're gonna create the temporary array. So to do this, we're just gonna copy the equipped weapons array and paste it over here. And in front of it, we're gonna change the E to a capital E and type temp in front of it. So this is going to be our temporary array. Now let's scroll down. Now we're going to create the for statement to copy all the objects from the equipped weapons array into the temporary equipped weapons array. And we're also going to add the script to ignore the empty elements in the equipped weapons array. So first of all, we're going to create a for statement. So type for, create the first variable. So we're going to type int a equals 0. So the for statement, we're starting with 0, and create the condition. So this is going to loop while a is lower than equipped weapons array length. And also at the end, we have to increase the a, so type a equals a plus 1, like this. Now add these brackets. So we're starting the condition with 0, and the first statement is going to loop inside of these brackets while this is true. And every loop, the a is going to increase by 1. So by using this, we're going to go through the whole equipped weapons array. So let's get started. First of all, we're going to create the if statement to ignore the empty elements inside of the equipped weapons array. So to do this, let's create a if statement. So if equipped weapons array, and add these brackets to access the elements inside of the array. And now let's add a over here. So every loop, it's going to be looking at different element, and it's going to go through the whole array because of this condition. So to run the code inside of the if statement, the element has to have a game object linked. So if in this loop, the element inside the equipped weapons array is not null, which means that it has a game object linked, then it's going to run the code inside of these brackets. But if it's null, it's going to ignore it. So this code is only going to be run if the element in the equipped weapons array has a weapon linked. So we just want to copy the elements that have a game object linked. So to do this, first of all, we're going to resize the temporary array. So we're going to type array resize. We're going to increase the size by 1. So to do this, we're going to first of all reference the array that we want to change. So type reference temporary equipped weapons array. And now we have to actually type the number, so how big the array should be. So to do this, to increase it every loop by 1, we're going to type temp equipped weapons.length and plus 1. So now every time the equipped weapons array has a weapon linked, temporary array gets resized by 1. Now in the next line of code, we're actually going to save the object inside of the temporary array. So inside of the new element that we just created by using this. So let's type temporary equipped weapons. Now add these brackets, and to add the object to the new element that we just created by using this, we're going to type temporary equipped weapons.length -1. So the reason why we're doing -1 over here is because, for example, if the length is 1, then you have only element 0 in it. So the elements inside the array start with 0, but if you run temporary equipped weapons length, it's going to return that the length of it is 1. So because we want to access the element that we just created, so the newest one, we're using temporary equipped weapons.length -1. So now to save the actual weapon, we have to type equals equipped weapons, add these brackets, and type A. Alright, so this is gonna go through the whole equipped weapons array, and every loop this is gonna look at the element if it has a weapon linked to it. So if it's not null, which means the weapon is linked to it, then it's gonna increase the size of the temporary array and save the weapon to the temporary array. Alright, so now in the temporary array we have all the weapons linked. So now we have to go in the next line of code, and we actually have to copy the whole content of the temporary array inside of our actual equipped weapons array. So to do this, we just have to type equipped weapons equals temporary equipped weapons, like this. So now the whole content in the temporary array gets copied to the equipped weapons array. Alright, so now that we copied the content of the temporary equipped weapons array inside of our actual array, we want to remove the content of the temporary array. So before it runs this code, every time the temporary array has to be empty for this to work. So to remove the whole content, just resize it to 0. So we're gonna type array.resize and access the temporary arrays. So reference temporary equipped weapons, and now type 0. So we set the length of the temporary equipped weapons array to 0, so all the content has been removed. Now in the next line of code, we have to check if the equipped weapons length is higher than 0. So we're gonna type if equipped weapons.length is bigger than 0, then we're gonna run the code inside of these brackets. But if it's equals to 0 or lower than 0, then it's gonna run the code inside of the else statement. So if the player has still weapons equipped, then after the player drops a weapon, we want to activate a weapon for him. So to do this, we're gonna activate the first weapon. So we're gonna type select. So we're gonna type selected weapon equal 1. So we used in the previous tutorials a selected weapon to choose a weapons. Selected weapon is set once you press the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the program actually knows which weapon you want to use. So because the player just dropped the weapon that it had selected, now we want to activate another weapon. So we're just gonna activate the first weapon that he picked up. So to do this, we set the selected weapon to 1, and now we actually have to run this function over here that we created in previous tutorials to actually switch the weapon. So type switch weapons and run this function like this. So if the player has still weapons equipped, then we're activating the first weapon that he equipped. But if the player dropped all the weapons, then we want to set the selected weapon to 0. The reason why we want to set it to 0 is because in previous tutorials we set over here on trigger enter, if selected weapon is 0, then once you pick up the first weapon, it's gonna automatically activate for the player. But if selected weapon is not 0, which means that the player already picked up a weapon, then it's not gonna automatically switch to the new weapon that you just picked up. You're gonna have to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on your keyboard to switch to the new picked up weapon. Alright, so we also want to make the script to throw the weapon. So to do this, let's just go over here, and first of all we're gonna create a new int value. So we're gonna type public int drop speed and set it to 1 by default like this. And now we're also gonna add a private game object and name it drop. So we're just gonna save the new object that we just created inside of this object to change the speed of the object. So to do this, just scroll down to over here and actually instantiate. If you put a game object in front of it, it's actually gonna return, which means it's gonna save the game object that we just created inside of the game object that we want to save it in. For example, if we put drop inside of it, then the object that we just created is gonna be saved into drop. So let's scroll down, and over here in front of it, we're gonna type drop equals instantiate. This part of the code is actually gonna create the object, and then after that, it's gonna save it inside of the game object that we just created, drop. So now we can actually access the reached body of the object. So type drop get component reached body, add these brackets, and type dot velocity equals transform dot forward and multiply it by drop speed like this. And now we have to do this the same for the rest of the weapons. So just go over here and we're gonna copy this, paste it over here and paste it over here, and now also copy this and we're gonna paste it over here and over here like this. Okay, now let's save it. Let's go back to Unity, and for example, if you want to drop the weapon, just press Q and a new weapon has been created. Now if you press number 3, you can no longer switch to the cannon because it has been dropped. So basically inside the equipped weapons, if we look at the equipped weapons array, let's pick up the weapon, it gets resized, it picks up the cannon. If you press Q, it's gonna drop the pistol. So this is gonna be completely removed from the equipped weapons array because we just removed it by creating a temporary array and then copying the content of the temporary array inside of the equipped weapons array. So press Q, it gets completely removed, and press Q, and now as you can see, we have no longer any weapons. So now when you pick up the first weapon, it automatically equips it, but now when we have actually a weapon picked up, it no longer automatically activates it. We have to switch it between using the numbers 1, 2, 3 like this. Alright, so this is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If this helped you, please leave a like on the video. In the next tutorial, we're gonna create some simple enemies, so if you want to see that, please subscribe to the channel.